Look, Brody, you started a panic on a public beach. You shot up the damn place. God knows who you could have injured. Now, what if somebody decides to sue us? Did you ever stop to think about that? It could ruin us.
You don't have to worry about being sued or being ruined. If this turns out to be what I think it is, because there won't be anybody here.
Yeah, now, Martin, let's not,
Let's not what, Larry? What?
Oh, Jesus, Larry, huh? Come on, let's just forget it. He won't listen. It's obvious the man has made up his mind.
You bet your life I've made up my mind. But I'm telling you, and I'm telling everybody at this table, that that's a shark. And I know what a shark looks like because I've seen one up close. And you better do something about this one, because I don't intend to go through that hell again.
Hello and welcome to Vintage Pop. I'm your host, Greg May. We are here for episode 9 of Vintage Pop. And you know, it's actually been a long time since I've actually even done a show. It's been April where I did the show with Diner and Mean Streets, the guys from the neighborhood. So we had to do a little bit of housekeeping. I kind of had to try and figure out a new way of how to get this going. And we are here live at 1984 in Wilmington. I mean, it's live right now, but it'll be probably airing tomorrow. And joining me on the podcast is a good friend and listener of the show, Dan Richmond. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Greg. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm really glad to have you here. We've been talking for a number of years here about all kinds of different things, movies, pop culture, television, and even stuff like HBO and cable TV. And it's definitely great to have you on, and I thought it would be great for us to discuss a variety of different topics if we could move forward in that direction. So we're going to see how it goes, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely. As always, it's great for me to discuss all of my bizarre interests with you, so appreciate it.
It's great though, because there's always I feel like the hardest thing always when you get into talking about movies or anything vintage or kind of just not exactly mainstream is that the hardest thing is trying to find people to talk to you about it that aren't on the internet.
Yes, vintage is my mainstream, so there you go.
Yeah, and and especially at my age too. I mean, there's a little bit of an age gap, but I mean, it's hard for me to find a lot of people that are in their 20s that want to talk about these types of things, right. And you know, they don't care. They're more worried about the new Marvel movie that's coming out, and
yeah, they tend to look forward more than back.
Yeah,
I think.
And I think it's funny. I was down the shore for the weekend, and a friend of mine. He brought this girl that he's been kind of seeing, and she was in the back seat, and she was kind of talking about Hereditary came up.
Okay.
She didn't like it.
It has mixed, reactions.
Well, it's funny. I went to go with Rich, another friend of ours who's here at the bar, and I got there a little bit early before him and Aaron got there.
Right.
And the people that came out before, they hated it. Completely hated it. I said, "Oh, how was it?" And they said to me, "Oh, well, it's just not for me," or they just were like, it was weird, or they just didn't get it, I guess.
I really want to be careful and not step on and spoil anything for anyone who might not have seen it, but I can totally see if you went into the film expecting one thing that you might be either maybe not pleasantly surprised by the direction that it goes, because it's certainly, I wouldn't consider it a fun summer horror movie. Oh, no. You know, like in the, like I consider
not like the stuff we're going to talk about.
Kind of like a new,
today,
yeah. Conjuring is kind of like a new classic, and that was a summer hit. You know,
now that's something I've never even seen. I've never seen the Conjuring series,
especially in the theater. But like, it's I think that Hereditary is great, but I could also see why people would consider it kind of a bummer. You know?
It's definitely a downer, and I think, and I don't think this is giving away too much, but there's certain points in the movie that there's not so much actual horror taking place, but a lot of like those scenes where just this tensions building up, where the family's sitting at a table.
Distress.
Yeah, and you just you can just feel the tension in the room, like the expression, you could cut the tension with a knife.
Right.
Look, there's just so many scenes like that, and I think that also adds to the stress that you have as you're watching the movie, watching this family.
Well crafted, great acting, great visuals and art direction. Like the house is amazing in that, and I think it going back to what your whole podcast is about, I think it certainly draws from classics of the past, but also adds a new twist too. I really liked it. I would like to see it again because I'm sure that's going to be one you're going to pick up a lot more from subsequent repeat viewings.
Oh, I think so too, especially when you were reading all kinds of different things that came out in the press about it, and the director who, most of the time directors never tell you why they did something. I was surprised. I think his name's Ari Asher or something.
I think that sounds right.
Direction.
Yeah.
And he was actually kind of breaking it down. I know Rich sent me a article about it, and then some more other friends of ours, Kevin and James, were talking about a lot of the different things. But I'm going to throw 2 movie titles at you that I think they draw a lot of things from, and I think it's Rosemary's Baby and The Sentinel. Definitely,
and that's I think you pretty much nailed it on the head with those two. And I want to talk more about it. I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but yeah I think those are really good analogies you could draw from those two.
Both climaxes of Hereditary and The Sentinel seem very, very similar, of like how like it was like that gradual buildup, and then everything just kind of the pedal just like goes like straight to the floor at the end of it.
Right.
But kind of going off the rails talking about it, she said that she didn't like it. So me talking about movies that I drew a lot of things from, I said to her, well, you should see The Sentinel because it's definitely a very, I don't want to say it's a similar film, but it draws a lot of that, especially the ending with a lot of the extras that they use towards the end of that movie to really...
that movie as a kid freaked me out. The Sentinel.
I think I saw it the first time.
I don't think you have to be a kid,
No,
but
no.
I think it would.
Yeah, I think I was like 12 or 13 when I saw it the first time,
Yeah.
and it's on the level of disturbing, very close to The Exorcist, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like anything with demons or anything like that. Usually always is, I can do like psycho killers, I could do cannibals, I could do...
That's a popcorn movie, but for me, it's the scary ghost stories, haunted house movies, going into the supernatural or the occult, the occult. Yeah. That's the stuff that like scares me, and stuff.
So, trying to recommend an older film to her, kind of bringing it back, though, but she would say, I don't watch anything old. And I said, okay, well, what is your definition of old?
Okay.
Because I'm thinking she's going to say, like, okay, maybe she'll say, like, the 90s or the 80s. The year she told me she doesn't watch anything prior to 2010. There's not much to smile about in this decade, though, for movies.
Wow.
I mean, there's definitely been some good ones, but I mean, I don't think if you roll the clock past 2010, you could...
I mean, the only thing you'd say for that is that, everyone making movies after 2010 learned everything they know from everything before
I guess that's a valid argument, yeah. So the topic for today's show, we're going to talk about, and I always try to come up with some type of fun name for it. So far, I'm going with, Summer Sequel Showdown.
That's great.
Because both of these movies, Jaws 2 and Psycho 2, both came out in the summer. Both were Universal, and I didn't even think to make that whole connection until we kind of talked about planning this out. But I'll get some of the information about the show. If this happens to be your first time listening to the show, Vintage Pop is a podcast hosted by me, Greg May. The show is dedicated to bringing you the stuff you missed from yesterday from someone who was not there for it the first time around, and it's a fun and informative look into the pop culture of yesterday. We talk about movies, we talk about books, music, and TV, and all eras for the most part, much before 2010 will be talked about. There's some contact information. If by some strange chance you want to email the show and give us some fan mail, I'd love to hear from you. VintagePopcast@gmail.com. We have a Twitter. I try to keep up with it sometimes. Vintage Popcast. And also the blog. I'd like to leave a lot of show notes of all the different things that come up and all the things that we talk about so that you can kind of do your own research on your own time. And the best way to do that is to visit the blog page, and that is vintagepop-podcast.blogspot.com. So let me take a look at the time here. All right, so what we'll do is we'll take our first break. We'll come back, and I guess the first movie we'll talk about is Jaws 2. All right?
Sounds great.
Great.
Show starts in 7 minutes.
vast and unknown depths of the ocean. How could there have been only one?
Chief Brody, can we go, please?
I think we may have another shark problem. Are you serious?
Roy Scheider.
Hey, look, there's my dad! The whole beach looks incredible.
Lorraine Gary. And Murray Hamilton.
Look at this. That's a shark. Out of the water now!
Look, Brody, you started a panic on a public beach. Now, what if somebody decides to sue us?
That's a shark.
Did you ever stop to think about that?
And I know what a shark looks like because I've seen one up close. And you better do something about this one because I don't intend to go through that hell again.
Don't press it this time.
Mike is out there.
None of man's fantasies of evil can compare with the reality of Jaws.
All right, welcome back to Vintage Pop. I'm your host, Greg May. We're here with Dan Richmond. We're at 1984 in Wilmington. Great bar if you're in the Philadelphia, New Jersey, well, South Jersey, Philadelphia, Delaware, Northern Delaware type of area. Definitely come on out, and we're here all the time. If you want to talk about movies, or we do great trivia stuff here on Tuesdays, where you can usually find both of us, and great shows on the weekend. It's a great place here. Been spending many, many years here. And it's a great place to sit and talk about a podcast surrounded by arcade games and, you know, there's a jukebox over there and the great wall art, the murals that are all over the walls. And it's just really a great place to be. So we'll get right into it. Jaws 2, 1978, the sequel to Jaws 1, obviously, came out in the summer of 1978. And I guess what we could do is, do you want to kind of summarize what it's about? Our phone's ringing.
It is, yeah. It'll stop in a minute. Yeah, the thing about Jaws 2. All right, so Jaws is hands down my favorite movie of all time. I saw the original with my dad when I was seven. It was here's. I mean, this is the thing about talking about such subjects is that I have a pretty good memory, and I actually am old enough to have been around for a lot of this stuff. So, Jaws came out summer of 75. Christmas of 75, it was still in theaters. And that's when I saw it, was around Christmas time in 1975. I saw, granted, I was 7. I saw half of it through my hands because I was, but it made such a huge impact on me. It will always be my favorite movie. So I saw Jaws in the theater, but here's the weird thing. And I vividly remember the release of Jaws 2 in the summer. For some reason, the trailers and everything made me too scared to see Jaws 2 in the theater for whatever reason. Of course, I eventually watched it. I think it's HBO after it was initially released. I think it ended up, I'm not sure if it did a theatrical re-release, but it definitely ended up the summer of 1980 on HBO for the first time.
There's a great ad that I've seen on eBay and it's kind of circling around that shot of the shark. Now that's the poster art, though. It's the shark behind the jet skier and
Right.
like that whole HBO like video guide for like
that's right.
summer of 1980 or whatever.
Yeah, I would definitely watched it multiple times then, but for whatever reason, I did not see it in the theater. However, I remember it being a big hit, and I definitely remember that was the summer of Grease. So, like, I remember it being in one theater and Grease being in the other theater, and it was like, you know, a really big deal all summer. And even though I didn't go see it, I would still, based upon the bubblegum cards and also the Mad Magazine story, like I knew the story, you know, because I could pick up, even though I hadn't seen a movie, there were little ways you could pick up, you know, what the story was, novelizations, and all of that kind of stuff. So I definitely remember the trailer being really terrifying, like, you know, and you got to say,
pretty good though. I think I watched the trailer the other day just in
it's done
preparation
really
for
well.
the show. Yeah,
and you got to hand it to them. A tagline that people are still using, just when you thought it was safe to blank, I mean, for Jaws 2, go back in the water, but they still use that tagline.
I said it just when you thought it was safe to forget about this podcast.
Exactly. You know, it's just become part of the American vernacular now.
Yeah.
Like, hats off to the marketing department for coming up with that tagline,
Universal.
which was great. Yeah.
Which it's just crazy too. And like, I guess we could talk a little bit about the director, Jeannot Zwark, who did a movie. He got Jaws 2 because of a movie called Bug, which I've never seen Bug. Have you seen Bug?
I have not seen that.
Now, I know he's done a lot of that and Night Gallery. I don't know what episodes of Night Gallery, but...
Which I'm sure that Brown and Zucker and Brown probably said, well, Spielberg did Night Gallery, so this guy did Night Gallery. There you go, you know.
Spielberg's Night Gallery episode is like super weird. It's got Joan Crawford in it. It's like she like loses her vision, so she like buys someone's eyes, and yeah.
Yeah, I had seen in the Spielberg documentary, he said he was trying to be extra, you know, he was really trying to show off with those early projects, you know, and everything. So.
And then Duel too, how like you can like
great.
Duel and the way that the shark dies and the way that I think everybody's noticed that by now, but it's very similar.
Yeah, Spielberg's like, I've got a template. I can just change the fish for the shark now. So
Jeannot Zwark. Also, a movie of his that I really like is Somewhere in Time with Christopher Reeves.
Yep.
That one hits me right in the feelings every time I watch it. And it's it's just a silly, like, I guess it's a science fiction romantic drama.
But, I mean, man.
That's another one that was on cable all the time. Even in the 90s when I was growing up, that's how I saw it. I saw it on Stars or Encore or one of those.
But, I mean, you got beautiful Jane Seymour and Christopher Reeve. Christopher Reeve was an incredibly charismatic leading man. You can't help, I mean... You knew him already as Superman, so you were already on board with whatever he was, you know, doing. So.
There's so much more that he could have been utilized for in film roles that he just never was in. I mean, you never saw Christopher Reeves ever play as a bad guy. Now, I don't know if that would have ever been believable.
Bad Superman and Superman 4.
No, that's 3.
Unshaven Superman.
3 is
drinking whiskey
with Richard Pryor.
Right, that's right. Yeah.
And he's like a computer hacker.
That's right.
The movie is complete garbage.
That is the same. That is the same.
But I'll watch it.
Yeah.
In 1983, same year as the second movie we'll be talking about, Psycho 2.
Yeah.
But so basically the premise of this movie is there's another shark on Amity Island. Nobody believes Chief Brody. He actually gets fired from his job. Murray Hamilton, the mayor, he's back. And a funny story about him. There's a bunch of VHS groups that I'm in on Facebook. He has he had a nephew named like Stephen Pisani. He's like a songwriter. He's a nobody. I'll preference it with that. But he used to like to show off all of his movie memorabilia and stuff that he had, because apparently Murray Hamilton also did episodes of Batman in the 60s.
Okay.
Have you ever seen The Hustler with Paul Newman and Jackie Gleason?
I know of it, but I haven't seen it.
They go to Kentucky for the Kentucky Derby, and they play. He plays like a high stakes game of pool, and Murray Hamilton's like one of the people Paul Newman plays. So he's definitely been around on a lot of things as a character actor, but he returns as the mayor. The funny thing is, though, that guy used to always like to tout that, my uncle was the mayor in Jaws, so everybody used to call him the nephew of the mayor of Sharktown and everything. But he
hopefully he inherited the anchor blue leisure suit with anchors all over it.
What's funny is the guy from Opie and Anthony Cumia, he had that jacket. There's I think you can order one.
I think there are.
Yeah, if I can find it like on Amazon or something, I'll put it in the show notes. But you can have your own
a seaside version of a seersucker suit,
Amity Island. That he probably got out of like a novelty Sears catalog.
Right.
What about that guy that's like the manager of like the Holiday Inn?
That's is it the guy? The one I was thinking of. I don't know if we're talking about the same character, which is sort of like a little subplot, which is he had employed Mrs. Brody with the real estate, real estate development and stuff, and he was a little too flirty with Mrs. Brody there.
Well, I wondered about that too, because here's a plot point that they didn't talk about they didn't show in the first Jaws movie. In the book, Brody's wife and Hooper have an affair. So I don't know if they were kind of like trying to
revisit,
because I know that script went through like various rewrites, and some things were left out and other things were not left out. So there's this big hotel that's opening, and they're trying to revitalize Amity Island, and in the wake of this, there's some divers, which I thought was a nice touch that they actually showed the orca ship. They reused some stuff in Psycho 2 we'll talk about later that I wasn't really happy about, but I thought that was cool. The score was really, really good. I mean, it borrows from stuff from the original, but there's a lot of like that harp stuff that I really enjoyed.
Yep. I love the passage of when the catamaran race is what they call it on the soundtrack. It's a great piece, a John Williams piece of music. Yeah, and I thought that they used enough of the familiar themes of music from the first one, but I thought he did a great job with the score for sure.
Yeah, it has that like the scenes that are underwater. It definitely has like what your brain would picture, like kind of that whole theater of the mind of what it would sound like, music underwater. I thought really, really great effects in this movie.
That is where you and I might differ, because that is the one thing that I feel
it's like the Universal ride on steroids.
It is like the Universal ride, but like, I think the movie is great. I think Scheider does a great job, even though he really didn't want to do it. I think he definitely.
Do you know that he was going to be Robert De Niro's character in The Deer Hunter, and he walked away from that role to do Jaws 2, and De Niro took the role in The Deer Hunter.
Yeah, but the shark is what blows it for me. And I know you could probably...
They had to rebuild it.
Had to completely rebuild it, which is a real shame. And I don't know why they... I think that by trying to add something to it, that they... this is just my personal taste. There's just... Its head is oddly shaped to me. Its neck is too long for me. And like, there's just a couple of other things. I do like the idea of... And I don't want to blow the storyline, but having it be burned, burned, giving it the scarred look, I do kind of like that. But its eyes are not as good as in the first movie. I don't know.
You are right about that. There are certain angles that the shark is shown, and that's the difference between Jaws 1 and Jaws 2. Jaws 1
that really takes me out of it, and I'm sure you would recognize the scene where he swipes across the side of the boat and his entire mouth like folds over.
I'll tell you something about that, though. Are you talking about when they pull the Brody kid out of the water? You know that the shark was not supposed to come that close to him. You've seen that. You've seen the documentary. It's just on the DVD. I watch it on YouTube. I watched mine on Laserdisc.
Yeah.
But I think the shot's good. I think,
do too.
And that's one thing about Swarek. Apparently, he was good at setting up action pieces. Yeah. And I think there's more than one shark. There's one that I read was called the luxury shark. Yep. And then there was other ones as well. And you can kind of tell in some shots, the more I think about it, you can see it's definitely moving on a track in certain points.
There's nothing wrong with that scene other than the fakiness of the shark, for lack of a better word. But the shots, like the attack on the helicopter, I think is amazingly cool. His whole direction. I mean, literally, it's Jaws as a slasher. basically.
That's one thing I wanted to say. I'm glad you brought that up because the kids are your typical slasher, like Friday the 13th, like cannon fodder for the shark to just rip through. They set it up in the same way. There's guys that are trying to get with the girls on their boats. There's that whole Miss Amity Island and that whole scene. Poor that kid Eddie or whatever, who spoiler alert, gets eaten by the shark along with other of them. But this is one thing that they brought up in the documentary, and I tend to agree. It kind of has like that American Graffiti vibe about like it's not so much cars, but because these kids live on an island, it's their sailboats.
Yep, I think that's great. And you brought up the attacks on the kids. Like as far as those effects go, pretty brutal attacks. Like Eddie's attack is pretty brutal, and then the one I forget what her name is, but one of the ones in the sort of sailboat caravan where you actually see the shark chomping, which is I think is awesome.
Well, yeah, because the little Brody kid is in the water and she pushes him up on top of the boat, and then the shark just comes out and gets her. And a lot of those, I mean, as fake as kind of the shark looks at times, and I think that's what we'll get to with a general consensus for this movie once we're kind of done with it. It's a competently made sequel.
Yeah, it is. Oh, yeah, definitely.
I don't think that there's anything that you could. I don't know. I mean, I definitely read some of the other script options. There was an idea to do a prequel with the whole Quint story of the Indianapolis.
Yep.
I think this is the best possible situation that you get for a Jaws sequel.
You get Scheider back, you get Brody back, you get enough characters, and then you get something for teenagers that teenage movie-going audiences can identify with, and all of that sort of thing. And I thought that did. Really quick note on the cast. You mentioned the Miss Amity, and I forget. I do not know the actress's name, but Tina was the character's name. And when John Carpenter was casting Halloween, it had come down to her and Jamie Lee.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Now she got
her name's Ann Dusenberry.
Yep. She got left behind pretty quickly for the name appeal of Jamie Lee Curtis, obviously. But she was in the running for Laurie Strode.
She did some TV. Yeah. Magnum P.I., Family Tree. It's just a TV series. It looks like it was like one season. But yeah, she kind of faded away after 1992. Mm-hmm. She did an episode of Matlock in 91, but that was it for her. Maybe her life would have been different if she would have gotten the Halloween part. But
then again, maybe Halloween would have been different.
That is true. She is not really that great of an actress, but she's the whole scene.
She does yell shark pretty well, though.
When she's screaming for she's like, "Come on, Eddie, swim!" And he's like holding onto the ship so hard. And that it breaks the part of the boat off when the shark
Yeah, she does. The thing she yells out, if I was him, I would not that wouldn't help me very much. It's much like she's like, "You're screwed, Eddie. You better swim."
I mean, I guess he had a good time with Miss Amity, but at what cost?
I know.
So, it was a $30 million budget. It made estimated apparently 187.9 to 208.9 million in the box office. Yeah. And it was a hit all summer long. I definitely remember that. Do you when you were in school? Do you remember kids talking about it?
Oh yeah.
What were people excited, or did they think it was going to be?
They even mentioned it in that documentary. He eats a helicopter. Yeah, he eats a helicopter. And all of that.
Because I don't know. Sometimes I know
he's a killer whale and a helicopter.
I guess maybe back then I would have I know now when sequels come out of modern movies or even I'll tell you what remakes, I'm always But I feel like something like that, I think, at the time.
And, I mean, Universal, Zanuck Brown were ahead of the game in a lot of ways, starting with Jaws in the mass distribution of a single film on a single day, but also in, all right, we're going to do Jaws 2. First thing we're doing, we're going to come up with a poster art, and we're going to start, Jaws 2's coming, because my dad went to Universal Studios in the summer of '77, and they had Jaws 2 coming, things. So they were working, hyping that up big time.
Yeah. Awesome.
And we have to mention also, I don't know if it's his debut, but Keith Gordon as one of the kids on the boats, Keith Gordon from
I didn't
Christine and
really?
And
Back to School?
And Back to School.
And Legend of Billie Jean?
Yep.
Really? I didn't catch that.
Yep.
Wow. You know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, was he the one that had like he's kind of looking like an Elvis towards the end of his life? Yeah.
He's one of the nerdier ones. But
yeah,
he's on there.
He gets one of the girls to go on his sailboat, though.
He does, yeah.
And you know what? Later on in life, he gets Helen Slater in The Legend of Billie Jean. And
the Back to School girl.
Yeah, I can't think of her name, but...
Actually, Back to School. He had... And the girl from Christine's?
That's a movie I could definitely talk about at some time, Back to School.
Alexandra Paul.
That's a great movie. All right, so I always kind of talk about like what a critic said about it at the time.
Right. I don't know this.
Vincent Canby, who was a big-time critic for the New York Times. I have a lot of books and stuff of reviews that he said some of the action sequences have been well staged, but they've been dropped into the film so indiscriminately that Jaws 2 never builds a particular climax. It similarly drones on and on and on like a television movie. I think it's a little harsh, but I mean, at least he did say kind of some of the things we said. Action sequences were well staged, but you know they're always kind of heavy on things. This is the same guy. I have a book from I'm trying to get all the volumes. New York Times Film Review, 1973 to 74 is what I have, and he hated The Exorcist. He actually used the words occultist claptrap apparently. So. Wow. It's always a hit or miss. And Pauline Kael was another critic back in the day that was kind of harsh on things at the time. So we'll take our second break, and then when we come back, we'll talk about the second movie that we're going to talk about, Psycho 2, another competently made sequel. And
another great summer Universal sequel.
Yeah. All right, we'll be right back. Vintage Pop.
Here, signed by 743 people against Norman Bates' release.
Madam, please sit down. This matter is being represented by the district attorney.
Norman was not convicted of murder. He was found not guilty by reason of insanity.
Don't you realize they're going to release a homicidal maniac?
I ask you to sit down, Mrs. Loomis.
It's all too obvious. Our courts protect the criminals, not their victims.
Norman Bates is judged, restored to sanity, and is ordered released forthwith.
It's 22 years later, and Norman Bates is coming home.
I own a motel not too far from here, and you'd be welcome to spend the night in one of the empty rooms if you'd like. Good night, Mary.
And he's back in business.
Who is this? My mother is dead. I'm telling you, there was a note on that wheel from my dead mother.
Norman, it couldn't be your mother. It had to be someone else.
But trust her. She would never do anything to hurt me. No. She'll kill you. I know she will.
Look out behind you!
No, I won't do that. You can't make me kill her.
22 years later, Norman Bates is home. Psycho 2.
It's starting again.
All right, welcome back to Vintage Pop, and we are here at 1984 in Wilmington talking about our summer sequel showdown. We did Jaws 2. I'm here with Dan Richmond, and we're going to be doing Psycho 2 now from 1983, and I know that's a personal favorite of yours.
Yeah, that's right. And unlike Jaws 2, this is one I did see in the theater on opening day. So
were you excited when you saw the trailer, or how was it kind of marketed back then?
Oh, it was had that classic poster with Norman and the Psycho house. I had just seen the original Psycho on like TBS on TV like the couple of years before that. So it was definitely because 83, the high point of the slasher movie craze, and definitely everyone would say the godfather of the slasher movies and everything like that was Psycho, and so everyone was looking forward to it, but also like because it had been so long picking up that story, also like where are they going to go with this? Really, I had no idea what it was going to be like, and it was also, I mean, to be honest, I was 83, 14. 13, 14. Yeah. So just being able to see, going to the theater to see an R-rated movie was a big deal, still. The first one that I went to see in the theater was Friday the 13th 3, which was the previous summer, 82.
I love that movie.
Yeah, I saw that.
A lot of people talk crap on that movie. I know in the Delaware horror fans, like we had that list, and I was kind of going on and on about it.
Oh man, we saw it on opening day, in 3D. It was great. And so, Psycho 2, was still, a novel thing to go see a real horror movie, in the theater. So
now I don't know if that's the same house. I know the way it works. It's like a front facade.
Definitely the same location. They definitely had to rebuild the hotel part of it, motel.
Yeah.
And it on the same section of land at the Universal Studios backlot, but I'm not sure how much of the.
Have you ever been on the tour?
Yeah.
I've never been out that way. I've never the furthest west. I had a layover in San Francisco, but I was never in California.
Funny enough, that same summer that Psycho 2 came out, I was in L.A. and went to Universal Studios.
So you saw the set.
They definitely had it there as part of the tour. I bought, in the souvenir shops at Universal Studios that summer, they were selling the Psycho 2 poster, and I bought
That's awesome.
A poster. I bought 3. I bought the Psycho 2 one, and they had like the old ones. Like I got a Frankenstein poster and a Dracula poster. But it was definitely, that I remember that being part of the same summer. But it was something I was really, really looking forward to. Was the Psycho 2 release? Saw it the first day, for sure.
So Psycho 2 is basically it picks up, I think, 30 years after the events of the first movie. Norman is released. He was not convicted of murder, as they ended at the first movie. He was criminally insane, and he was treated by Robert Loggia,
which is an interesting casting choice.
Feach LaMotta from The Sopranos. Also,
I think he does okay. I mean,
I think he's all right. It's nice.
I love him. I think he's a great guy. I could listen to him. I could listen to Robert Loggia read the phone book. I think he just is an awesome character actor,
and he genuinely cared about Norman's well-being. I think he put that off really well.
What a great actor. He can go from a character as lovable as like the boss guy in Big to Feach LaMotta,
It's like the biggest piece of garbage. Yeah,
exactly. He has the whole range of that in his arsenal.
I also wrote down in my notes, Dennis Franz is in it, and I wrote is always king scumbag in everything I have seen. This movie, Blowout, and Die Hard 2.
Oh, Mr. Toomey. Mr. Toomey is a sleazebag for sure.
And Norman handled him pretty well, and
Oh, go ahead, pick up the knife, you loony.
Yeah, he's like, come on, psycho.
And he looks like permanently shit-faced drunk through the whole thing too.
He's got like that. He's got that same like type of like constant sweaty look that like Joe Spinell,
Burt Young.
Yeah, Burt Young has. like he's gonna crush like the napkin holder like Burt Young does in Back to School.
Exactly.
And he's so Norman's been released
has
from
a film of grease.
Yeah, he's also that sleazy guy that took the photographs of like the dead politician in Blowout, and Nancy Allen goes to see him, and like that disgusting like 2-room apartment. It's like a bed and like a kitchenette, and that's it. There's not even a toilet in there. It looks like.
Yeah, he's something else.
But he's always like typecast, and I even wrote that scene when he comes to the diner is absolutely insanity.
Yeah, but that's directed really well. There's like 3 or 4 things going on in that diner at that given time, and they keep switching back. You know, you're trying to find out, who's writing the mom notes to Norman, and
I think that's what's the greatest aspect of the movie. And I guess we'll talk a little bit about the actual movie. He's released after 30 years. He's set up with his job with Robert Loggia, sets him up with a job at a local diner. I guess they bring him back to his house and motel, which I think is
probably not very psychologically sound.
Like, let's bring the person back to the place that he murdered. The
scene of the
everyone.
crime.
Yeah. I don't know where, like, even his doctor thought that was okay.
I know.
He even says, like, I could get you a place in town, Norman. Like,
how about another state,
Like, shouldn't he have like moved out like to the way that like Ray Liotta, Henry Hill's character was at the end of Goodfellas, like lives the rest of his life as a schnook out in like Elvis country, like
a heavily secured halfway house for like decades,
Yeah, like he should have never been allowed to like just like, okay, you're free, here you go.
Exactly. But where would our movie be if it weren't for that? Really quick note though, when he's being released, I could be wrong, but I am almost certain that courtroom, when John Carpenter had to let Halloween be shown on television, he had to film some pickup scenes.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure same exact courtroom that
I've
they
never
used
seen
in
the
the TV version of Halloween.
I've always liked to see the TV version.
I got it. You can borrow it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because otherwise I would probably have to reach out to that beta group or something like that.
It makes sense. Universal. I'm pretty sure that Carpenter was filming Halloween 2 on the same, right around the same time.
But yeah, that would have been Rosenthal, I guess. Yeah.
Dean Cundy is the director of photography in both.
Yep. Work with Carpenter all the time.
Exactly.
Escape from New York. He's on all kinds of stuff, and even later on with other modern stuff. Definitely big, huge filmography for Dean Cundy.
Yeah.
And so basically, the whole premise of the movie is he's been released, and someone is trying to get him back to his old ways, or is it him, or
and not even waiting right off the bat, he's getting his messages and seeing his mother in the window, and like right off the bat.
I think that's one thing that works about this movie, and works, I guess, in Psycho 3 to an extent. There's a shred of like, you feel bad for Norman Bates.
Yeah.
And here's a guy who's brutally murdered many women, and now that he's released, you're kind of riding with that. Like, okay, let's give the guy a second chance. Like, he seems like a nice guy.
Anthony Perkins is a great actor, and he does that little boy lost kind of thing very, very well. That he seems completely not dangerous, and that you can relate to him, and he just loves his mom, and give him a break, but it's when he's, and you get a little glimpse of it, you get enough to know that when he snaps, he goes into not Norman anymore. It's a totally different person, which is pretty true mental illness, that
the first couple minutes of the movie, they show the shower scene. I don't think that's necessary.
That was one of the best things, because as a kid, getting to see that like on the big screen and everything,
I can understand
that was a big deal, and it still was, I remember being in the theater, and like, it's still people freaking out over watching that. I thought it was
it's probably definitely a different vibe, me sitting at home watching it, on a home video format, and just kind of going into it to review it for this show.
Right.
But I think one other thing, the score is a little weird.
The Jerry
Goldsmith, like, there's like these like certain like, it's definitely got that feel of like that early 80s, like really hard synth. Like they tried to like jam that synth in.
Yeah, that's true. But also like it's got some little themes that have like a melancholy, like sad.
Those are good.
Yeah,
those are very good.
Yeah.
I like to play like either like trailers or little clips. I guess you'll hear it once I edit it, but there's a the end of the trailer, there's like this little like piano cue or something when he stands like out front of the house and then the light goes on in the trailer and like 30 years Norman Bates comes home.
That is great. Yep. I remember exactly that shot.
And it's like we were talking about with Jaws too. It's another competently made sequel, and it's been a while since I revisited 3, which is directed by Perkins.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was an all right movie too.
That one's really good.
With Diana Scarwood.
All things considered, I think that Psycho 3 is probably a better movie, but Psycho 2 was great too. I mean, the director was
Richard Franklin.
Richard Franklin. He knew Hitchcock, and you know he definitely did his best to you know do an homage to Hitchcock, and I think he got along with Anthony Perkins okay. From what I can tell, Anthony Perkins was somewhat difficult to work with.
Oh, really?
But I think he did. You know, he was respectful enough for Hitchcock's work that you know, I think it's a really good sequel. One thing I was going to note about going back to the original, well, you have Vera Miles back from the original as
Lila
Loomis, and but Perkins, I mean, hey, I always want to, whenever you get name before the title, you know, that's Anthony Perkins in Psycho 2. That's you know.
Yeah, because the first one was Janet Leigh, I think was like first
I don't know,
billing?
the name before the title is usually a really big deal. Maybe they had to throw that carrot out there to talk Perkins into it. I'm not really sure.
There's another movie with him I like a lot. That doesn't get a lot of love. The Black Hole, the Disney movie.
Oh yeah, that's right.
It's basically Disney does Star Wars, but
it's been a long time since I've seen that.
You know what that movie's a lot like? It's basically 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea in space.
Right.
But I like that movie, and it's just nice to see Anthony Perkins in other things.
Right.
And other than the Psycho series and that, I think he did a movie in the 50s called Fear Strikes Out, where it's kind of like a biography of a baseball player from back in the day who had some type of mental illness and was able to overcome it and come back. I don't know if that was typecast because of Hitchcock. The thing about Richard Franklin, though, and we were talking about Hitchcock, have you ever seen Road Games?
I have not seen it, but I know that is
that's like another suspenseful. Yeah, Jamie Lee Curtis is in it. Stacy Keach.
Yeah, and the writer of Psycho 2, Tom Holland, like the two of them worked together, and I didn't know this until I just recently read it. Was that they did Cloak and Dagger together, which was one of an '80s movie that I loved. Would that
the arcade game back there was made because of the movie?
Yeah. It was a great movie. I had no idea that the two of those did.
I've never seen it. I know Dabney Coleman's in it.
Really good.
I'd like to see it. I always think of Dabney Coleman from War Games, but I mean, he did so much. 9 to 5 and a bunch of other stuff.
All kinds of things.
Was he the dad in Neverending Story?
I don't know about that, but I mean, of course, 9 to 5 and How to Beat a High Cost of Living and On Golden Pond and all kinds of things. Yeah.
What else did I?
He always seemed like a guy who should have had a sitcom. But I don't know. He looks like he has those sitcom looks, but I don't know if he ever did. You know?
But he's always just been like a solid character actor.
Right.
There's another guy who's a solid character actor. He looks a lot like Craig T. Nelson. His name's Ed Lauder. He was in. You ever seen Death Wish 3?
No.
He's like a police sergeant in that. Okay. You know who you would recognize him as? Maybe he is. You know, in The Longest Yard with Burt Reynolds.
Yes.
He's the prison guard, I think.
Oh, okay.
He was also in. You ever seen Magic with Anthony Hopkins, the dummy fat? He's Anne Margaret's estranged husband that comes back.
Okay.
So he does little roles and stuff like that. He kind of looks a little bit like Craig T. Nelson.
Yeah.
Without giving away the ending, and I think this is more of a movie that I'll probably, with hold the spoiler because I really want you to see it.
Right.
But
Good point.
I think the biggest thing the whole time you're watching this movie is it Norman doing it?
Right.
Or is it Lila Loomis? Or is it somebody else?
Lila Loomis' daughter, played by Meg Tilly in this.
Yeah, related to Jennifer Tilly, the younger sister.
Yes. And she's great, but she literally gives off the vibe in this is that she's literally passing through this movie on the way to her next role. It's really kind of the feeling that I get.
Oh,
from
definitely. But she's got like some type of like Stockholm syndrome thing going on with like Norman after a while.
Right.
Like, she was there for a reason.
Yeah. She, and it's weird because we talk about like these sequels and stuff like that. The next Jaws sequel came out this same summer. Jaws 3D came out. I totally could have seen her. It could have just as well been a role in Jaws 3D, but she was just passing through my genre performance on the way to my next,
She's done some other stuff too.
Big Chill, Children of a Lesser God.
Something Agnes of God.
Agnes, that's the one I'm thinking of,
Yeah, I've never seen that one, but I know that
it's Oscar nominated, I think. But she didn't, on the set, her and Perkins totally did not get along.
Oh, really?
I wasn't there, obviously, but it was probably... Perkins had kind of a chip on his shoulder like some of the older actors do about getting their due credit and respect, and I don't think that she did really, but they didn't get along so well.
It's funny. I didn't know he was dead until about like the mid 2000s.
Yeah.
I used to listen to a podcast called Retro Crush. They used to do, and he would interview like just actors and directors from time to time.
Right.
And I sent him an email. At this point, I was like a teenager, 13 or 14. I didn't know any better. The internet was kind of in its infancy. And I said, you should interview Anthony Perkins. And he's like, I'd love to, but he's dead.
Must have been early
1990 or
90s.
something like that. I think he had AIDS, actually.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
He did.
He had a wife, though, but I think he was like a closeted gay man or something.
One of those 60s Hollywood stories.
Like Rock Hudson.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that I didn't think Meg Tilly was necessarily bad, but you could just tell this was just something that she was doing, Perkins' performance, though, I think is really, really good. He does.
He slides right back into the Norman Bates role.
Oh, his little mundane conversations about have a sandwich with me, and and it's still like looking back on it now, a young girl why don't you come with me and stay at my abandoned hotel with me?
The motel's a drug-ridden mess. It's run by.
Sounds like a good idea.
Go hang out with King Scumbag.
Not even just my. No, it's not the hotel anymore. No, come into the house and stay at the house.
It just escalates. It's like first, okay, let's stay in the motel.
Yeah.
Oh, it turns out my motel manager's a scumbag.
Yeah.
You know what? Why don't you come up to the house? I'm going to have cheese sandwiches
have
and
a
milk.
Sandwich. Yes.
And then he's got he's like a bizarre
There's
Mr.
cookies
Rogers.
for dessert. Yeah, it's like all that
with
kind
his
of stuff.
turtlenecks and suits and crap.
And the way he does this little stutter thing about I didn't bring any cutlery. It's.
There's one scene that I think is really weird that I guess they were trying to show that like Norman was like human. There's a scene where Meg Tilly and Norman Bates are in his childhood bedroom, like late at night after a lot of this stuff starts happening. And he starts describing to her how the doctors took all his memories away, and all he can remember is these toasted sandwiches that his mom made him. And it's
What's
just
the thing with sandwiches. It's almost like the kid in Bad Santa. We'll have some sandwiches.
Yeah, and just the way that the lighting is, and it just zooms out. It made me feel like a high school play where at that point they're just like, all right, scene, and that's it.
Yeah, you totally can see that.
Yeah.
But in addition to all of this emoting, in keeping with the times, they amp up the gore quite a bit. Some great, still cringeworthy gore scenes in this movie. I don't know who the special effects guy was for this, but they did an awesome job.
I can take a look.
There are a couple of subplots that exist purely to provide an outlet for gore. But they do it so well. I'm not going to. One of the ones that's so cringeworthy to this day is, there's a part towards the end where one of our characters actually has to reach out and grab a butcher knife, with the hands.
Oh yeah,
that always is cringeworthy there. But definitely I think they did enough to make it competitive with the Friday 13ths and the Halloweens of the day, but not, not turning, they didn't turn Bates into Leatherface or anything.
Watch the Cosmos battle the Toronto Blizzards tomorrow night at 8. See all the soccer action here on WOR-TV, New York's Channel 9. Television as you like it.
All right, so we're back. Welcome to Vintage Pop, here with Dan at 1984 in Wilmington. So 2 great movies, Jaws 2 and Psycho 2, just turned out that way. 2 direct sequels, 2 summer sequels, and 2 Universal movies, and we definitely recommend that you check out both of them. So as I like to do at the end of every show, there are some upcoming events if you're around the area and if you kind of like a lot of the different things that we talk about on the show. There's going to be, I always talk about the Secret Cinema. There's going to be 2 upcoming events. Friday, July 20th at the William Way Center in Philadelphia. They're going to be doing a summer movie party. The proceeds apparently go to AIDS research. And it's they're showing a Marlene Dietrich movie from the 30s called Desire. I've never seen it. Also, the Secret Cinema is going to be showing at the Glenn Ford Mansion Wednesday, July 25th. That's right outside of Philadelphia. They're going to be showing a movie from the 30s called Thanks a Million. Also, Blobfest. Definitely, if you're going to be in the area, check that out. It's going to be July 13th through 15th. I'll be there on the Saturday. They're going to be screening Creature from the Black Lagoon in 3D, which I think is going to be absolutely awesome because that's going to be an original print. They showed the Suspiria print there, I think, before too.
Okay.
Did you see did you see it at all? The
Suspiria 4K? Yeah, we saw it at King of Prussia. It was great.
Did you see the Italian print?
I'm not sure. I know it was the 4K restoration. It was in a great big theater there.
But Kevin and I went. Yeah, I think it was a rare print, 35 millimeter print of Suspiria. They actually had to project the subtitles on the screen separately, which was funny because the computer messed up that was doing it. So then midway through the movie, everything started like happening really, really fast. And Kevin just turned to his girlfriend and he was like, "Did you get all that?" And it was fine because I saw that movie already countless times. I've seen Suspiria, so it was perfectly fine because I just wanted to see what the print looked like. But it was absolutely awesome. I think that's still making like the circles around in New York. So if you're in that area, definitely go check it out. Even if you can go see the 4K, it's beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful. Great.
So also, if you are the fan of the Pixies, come out. There's going to be a Pixies tribute this Saturday, the 7th, at 9 p.m. at 1984, right here where we are at 2511 West 4th Street, Wilmington, Delaware. It's going to be a great event. You come out and play the great arcade games, great drinks, great music, and great people, definitely. If you want to talk movies, I'm going to be here. Dan's going to be here. We can definitely talk it up.
The Pixies REM tribute is also Saturday night as part of that show. And then on Tuesday the 10th, we're having our second annual Sopranos trivia. So that will be a big deal as well. So
I'm definitely going to be there for that.
Yeah.
I guess I got a couple of ringers from New Jersey coming.
Well, it's pretty cool because we Steve Sharippa, the actor who played Bobby Bacalao, we have some prizes provided personally by him to give away for that. So it should be a lot of fun.
That's right. The Joe Bob Briggs, the 24-hour horror-thon coming up on Friday the 13th.
Yep, Friday the 13th into the 14th. Yep.
I don't know where I'm going to watch that.
I don't know. I definitely, even if I can't be in front of the TV, I really want to know what titles he selects. Or whatever.
They gave away a few of them. I think it was like Basket Case was one of them, and a couple other. I was supposed to watch it with Kevin and James at some point, but I forgot my friend from out of state that I only get to see like 2 or 3 times a year.
I'm assuming it's all going to be from the established what is on Shudder right now, I would guess. I could be wrong, but maybe,
I guess, and a lot of it has to do with rights and whatnot, too. So Definitely plenty of stuff to look forward to. I will leave everything that you need to know in the notes. Dan, I want to thank you a lot for coming on. This was great.
It's been my pleasure, Greg. Anytime.
Yeah, and hopefully we can do more of this in the future. So, and again, one last time, contact information. You can email us anytime at vintagepopcast@gmail.com. Again, that's vintagepopcast@gmail.com. The Twitter is vintagepopcast. And the blog page is vintagepop-podcast.blogspot.com. Again, vintagepop-podcast.blogspot.com. My name's Greg. We're here in 1984. It's been a great time, and we'll talk to you next time on Vintage Pop. Take care.